He's not breathing. Somebody help him. The panicked scream tore through the hushed lobby of the Holloway Institute. It was a place built on silence and control, a temple of glass and steel, where the only sounds were the soft chime of elevators and the whisper of expensive shoes on polished marble. But this sound, raw and jagged with terror, shattered the calm completely. Leona Crestwood, a CEO who could command boardrooms with a single glance, was on her knees. Her iron-willed composure, the armor she wore every day, had cracked. Her son, Finn, a small, pale boy of 8, was gasping, his chest heaving with ragged, useless breaths. His face was turning a terrifying shade of blue. Standing a few feet away, Dr. Eris Holloway was frozen. As the Institute's star scientist, her mind cycled through diagnoses, anaphylaxis, acute asthmatic crisis, but her body wouldn't move. She was paralyzed by the sheer primal fear of watching a child suffocate. The child of the woman who held her entire career in her perfectly manicured hands. Security guards were rushing forward, fumbling with radios. Their training meant for intruders. Not this. A call had gone out to the on-site medical team, but they were a world away, 3 floors up. It was Owen Ledger, the janitor polishing the floor by the west entrance, who moved first. He dropped his buffer, its hum dying with a soft whine. He didn't run. He moved with a fluid certainty that seemed to slow time. He slid across the marble floor on his knees, his movements economical and precise. "Ma'am, I need you to give me some space," he said, his voice low and steady, cutting through Leona's frantic cries. Leona looked up, her eyes wild. "Who are you? Get a doctor!" Owen didn't answer. His focus was entirely on Finn. "Finn, can you hear me? I'm Owen. I'm going to help you." He gently placed one hand on the boy's trembling shoulder and the other on his back, tilting him forward slightly. "That's it. Lean on me." His voice was a calm rhythm in a world of chaos. Eris finally unfroze, stepping forward. "What are you doing? You can't move him." "His airway is closing," Owen said without looking at her. He spotted a half-eaten protein bar with peanuts listed in the ingredients on the floor. "It's an allergic reaction. His emergency inhaler. Does he have one?" Leona, jolted by the question, fumbled with Finn's bag. "Yes, here." She thrust a small blue albuterol inhaler into his hand. Owen took it, his hand steady. He popped the cap, inserted it into a spacer he pulled from another pocket of the bag, and shook it with a practiced snap of the wrist. "Okay, Finn, I know this is scary. We're going to breathe together. Breathe out as much as you can. Good boy." He waited a beat, his timing perfect. Then he pressed the canister and held the spacer to Finn's lips. Slow breath in. Slow, slow, slow. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Let it out. He repeated the process, his movements a seamless ballet of practiced care. He didn't look like a janitor. He looked like someone who had done this 100 times before. The wail of a siren grew louder, and the Institute's medical team finally burst through the doors. But by the time they reached them, the worst had passed. The terrifying blue tint was receding from Finn's lips, replaced by a pale pink. His ragged gasps were settling into shaky, deeper breaths. He was crying now, quiet, exhausted sobs, his hands clutching the front of Owen's gray uniform. A paramedic knelt beside them. "What happened?" "Anaphylactic response. Secondary asthma attack," Owen reported, his voice flat. "Professional. Administered 2 puffs of albuterol via spacer. Vitals are stabilizing." He gently unwrapped Finn's fingers from his shirt and eased back, melting into the background. As the medical professionals took over, he became invisible again. He picked up his buffer, his shoulders slumping slightly, as if the energy that had surged through him had now vanished. Leona stood slowly, her composure returning like a mask, but her eyes were fixed on the janitor. She watched him walk away, the soft squeak of his work boots echoing on the floor. "Mom." Finn's voice was a weak whisper from the gurney. Leona rushed to his side. "I'm here, baby. You're going to be okay." "The quiet man," Finn murmured. "He told me a story about a star." Leona looked over her shoulder, but Owen was already gone. She looked at her head of security, who had been standing by uselessly. Her voice was cold steel. "Find out who that was," she commanded. "I want everything about him. His name, his history, everything. On my desk in an hour." The guard nodded. "His name is Owen Ledger, ma'am. He's on the night crew." I don't care what crew he's on, Leona snapped. A man like that doesn't just mop floors. Find out what he's hiding. The smell of antiseptic still clung to Owen's clothes as he pushed open the door to his small apartment. It was a scent he knew better than his own. He slipped off his worn work boots and moved through the dim living room. The place was spotless. Not just clean, but sterile. Not a home, but a safe zone. In the corner, under the soft glow of a nightlight, Poppy was asleep. She was curled on her side in a specialized bed, a thin tube tracing a path from a quietly humming machine to the back of her small hand. Her breathing was shallow. Owen knelt beside her, his large, calloused hand gently brushing a stray piece of hair from her forehead. Her skin was almost translucent. "Hey, sweet pea," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion he never showed the world. "Daddy's home." Poppy stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. They were large, hazel eyes full of a light that defied the frailty of her body. "Did you clean the stars tonight?" she murmured. Owen managed a small smile. It was their nightly ritual. He worked at the Holloway Institute, a gleaming glass tower. To Poppy, it was where the stars were kept, and her father's job was to polish them until they shone. "I did," he said softly, "polished every single one." She smiled. "Tell me a story." He settled into the worn armchair beside her bed and began to tell her about a clumsy comet and a brave little star. He told this story a dozen times, but he told it like it was the first, his voice weaving a world of safety and magic. Tonight, though, the images in his head weren't of comets and stars. They were of a small boy with a blue face and the terrifyingly familiar weight of a life held in his hands. For 10 minutes, he hadn't been Owen Ledger, the janitor. He had been someone else, someone he had buried a long time ago. The feeling left him hollow. He had sworn never to be that person again, but he had broken his own rule, and someone had noticed. Leona Crestwood's eyes had bored into him, not with gratitude, but with a cold, analytical curiosity that terrified him. Meanwhile, 15 floors up, Dr. Eris Holloway stared at a computer monitor. The lobby incident had left her rattled. She felt a sting of shame at her own paralysis, followed by annoyance. The janitor he had moved with an assurance she, a doctor of immunology, had lacked. "Anything?" she asked her lab assistant, Ben. He shook his head. "The results on batch 7 are the same, doctor. The cell cultures aren't binding. It's like the control group is contaminated again." Eris ran a hand through her hair. This was the third batch in 2 weeks to fail. Her project, a revolutionary gene therapy, was stalling, and Leona Crestwood was not a patient woman. An email she'd sent an hour after the lobby incident was still burning on Eris's screen. Subject, delays. Dr. Holloway, today's events, unfortunate. Let's not have any similar surprises with my investment. The board requires a progress report by Friday. I expect significant positive data. Don't disappoint me. Eris slammed her laptop shut. Run it again, Ben. Triple check everything. Someone is getting sloppy. In her penthouse, Leona Crestwood sat by her son's bedside. The report from her head of security lay on the nightstand. She picked it up. Subject, Owen Ledger, age 38. Employment history, custodial services, 5 years. Warehouse logistics, 2 years. Various temporary labor, 3 years. Education, Northgate High School diploma. Next of kin, Poppy Ledger, daughter, age 7. Criminal record, none. A portrait of a completely unremarkable life. A working-class single father. It made no sense. The man she had seen on the floor was not a high school graduate who pushes a mop. He was something more. There's a gap, her security chief had told her. Almost 4 years between his last temp job and when he started in logistics. No employment records, no credit history. It's like he fell off the grid. Leona stared at the report. Owen Ledger. She didn't know what he was hiding, but she would find out. Back in his apartment, Owen sat at the kitchen table. He pulled a worn folder from a locked drawer. Inside were medical bills, insurance denials, and a single brochure for the Holloway Institute's Department of Immunological Research. He opened it, his eyes falling on a picture of Dr. Eris Holloway. Below it, he had circled a line in red ink. Phase 3 trials for HVT-074 are currently underway with unprecedented results in treating rare pediatric autoimmune disorders. Poppy's doctor had told him last week she has months, Owen. Maybe. This trial, it's her only shot. He closed his eyes, the weight of it all pressing down. His daughter's only hope was locked away in a laboratory cleaned by his own hands, run by a woman who saw him as nothing, and funded by another who now saw him as a puzzle to be solved. And he knew with chilling certainty that if they discovered who he really was, they would never let him or his daughter anywhere near it. The next night, the air in the Holloway Institute felt different. Owen could feel it in the way the security guards watched him, their gazes lingering. He was no longer invisible. He kept his head down, focusing on the rhythmic swoosh of his mop, the simple work that had been his shield for years. He was cleaning the glass partition outside the main cryo-storage unit when the executive elevator chimed. Leona Crestwood stepped out. She wore tailored black trousers and a simple cashmere sweater. It was a calculated disarming. She was not alone. Holding her hand was Finn. "Mr. Ledger," Leona's voice was smooth, measured. Owen stopped mopping and turned slowly. "Ma'am, Finn has something he wanted to give you," she said, nudging the boy forward. Finn shuffled his feet and held out a folded piece of construction paper. Owen wiped his hands before taking it. He unfolded it. It was a child's drawing of two stick figures. One was small and blue, the other was tall and held a bright yellow star. "That's you," Finn whispered, pointing. "You're the star polisher." Owen felt a lump form in his throat. He crouched to Finn's level. "This is the best drawing I've ever seen, Finn. I'm going to put it in a very special place." Finn finally looked up, a small, hesitant smile on his face. "Mommy said you were brave." Leona's expression was unreadable. "I came to thank you properly, Mr. Ledger." "My son, what you did was remarkable. I've arranged for a substantial bonus to be added to your next paycheck." Owen stood carefully, folding the drawing into his pocket. "That isn't necessary, ma'am. I just did what anyone would have done." "No," Leona said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Not just anyone could have done that. Where did you learn to handle a medical crisis with such efficiency?" The question hung in the air, sharp and pointed. Owen could feel the trap. "First aid courses. The company requires them, and I watch a lot of medical shows on TV." It was a weak explanation, and they both knew it. Leona's lips thinned. He had refused her reward and given her a lie. The file said he was a simple man. The man before her was anything but. "I see," she said. "Well, my offer stands. If there's anything you need, my office is aware." It wasn't an offer, it was a test. A man like him would eventually need something, and when he did, he would come to her, and she would get her answers. She took Finn's hand. "Come, sweetheart." As they walked away, Finn gave Owen a small wave. Owen watched them go, his heart pounding. He had survived, but this was only the beginning. He was a mouse being circled by a hawk. Later, the building settled into slumber. Owen was on the 17th floor. He was emptying the trash when a faint, high-pitched whine caught his ear, coming from Eris Holloway's main lab. It was a sound he recognized with a sickening jolt. A centrifugal freezer with a failing coolant pump. He peered through the small glass window. The room was dark, save for the glow of monitors. The freezer had a small red light blinking on its control panel, a warning light, but someone had placed a piece of black electrical tape over it, rendering it nearly invisible. Owen's blood ran cold. That freezer held all of Eris's research samples, Poppy's only hope. If the temperature rose, everything would be destroyed. Protocol was to call security. Security would call the on-call lab tech, who would take 20 minutes to arrive. By then it could be too late. His mind screamed at him to walk away, be invisible, but his feet were already moving. He pulled a master key card from his belt. A low-level card, but a grateful security guard had upgraded his access a few months prior without logging it. Owen swiped the card. The lock clicked open. He slipped inside. The digital display on the freezer was flashing an error code. He knew E07, secondary pump failure. He pulled off the front panel. A thin, clear tube that fed coolant to the backup pump had been slightly disconnected. Not broken, deliberately loosened, just enough to create a slow, cascading failure. This was sabotage. He could fix it in 30 seconds, but he would leave a trace. He would be on surveillance, a janitor who knew how to service complex medical equipment. He would be exposed. He thought of Poppy. He thought of Leona's cold eyes. He couldn't fix it, but he couldn't walk away. He pulled a small notepad from his pocket and scribbled 4 words, his handwriting disguised and blocky. "Check coolant pump 2, valve loose." He folded the paper and slipped it under Dr. Holloway's keyboard. Then he slipped back out of the lab, closed the door, and vanished into the shadows, leaving the warning behind like a ticking bomb. Eris Holloway arrived at the lab just after dawn. Then she saw it, a small, folded piece of paper on her keyboard. Her first reaction was irritation. She unfolded it. The 4 words written in stark, blocky letters were a command or a warning. Check coolant pump 2, valve loose. She nearly tossed it, dismissing it as a prank, but something stopped her. It was too specific. With a sigh, she walked to the centrifugal freezer. Everything looked normal. The temperature was stable. Green lights blinked. She was about to turn away when her eyes caught a tiny glint on the control panel. A small piece of black electrical tape covered one of the secondary status lights. Her heart skipped a beat. She peeled it off. Underneath, a single red light was blinking a steady, silent alarm. Her breath hitched. She wrenched open the front panel. Following the lines, her eyes darted to the secondary coolant pump. And there it was, the feed tube hanging loose by a millimeter. A slow drip of coolant was pooling beneath it. The primary pump was holding the temperature for now, but it was burning itself out. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The tape, the loosened valve. This wasn't a mechanical failure. It was sabotage. Precise, patient, and designed to be catastrophic. And her contaminated samples. Had they been contaminated at all? Or had the temperature fluctuated just enough to skew the results? Someone was trying to destroy her work from the inside. She looked at the note. Whoever wrote this had just saved her project. But who? And why do it this way? Later that morning, she was summoned to Leona Crestwood's office. Leona sat behind a vast obsidian desk, her face impassive. Dr. Holloway, Leona began, I've reviewed your project's lack of progress. Combined with the security lapses, the board is getting nervous. We are a business, not a charity. Eris felt a flush of anger. The research is sound. We've had some equipment malfunctions. I'm not interested in excuses, Leona cut in. I'm interested in results. The board has approved an accelerated timeline. You have 1 month to produce a viable sample for preliminary human trials. 1 month, Eris, or I'm pulling your funding. 1 month. It was impossible. Leona, that's not enough time. The protocols, make it enough time, Leona said, her voice a menacing whisper, or find a new sandbox to play in. Eris walked out, the blood pounding in her ears. 1 month to save her life's work while fighting a saboteur she couldn't identify. That afternoon, Owen sat in a small examination room, Poppy on his lap. Dr. Anna Sharma looked at the chart, her expression gentle but weary. The immunosuppressants aren't holding her anymore, Owen, she said softly. Her T-cell count is dropping again. The inflammation markers are the highest they've ever been. Owen felt the familiar cold dread. So what's next? Increase the dosage? Sharma shook her head. We're already at the maximum safe level. It's time to start talking about palliative options. Making her comfortable. The words hit him with the force of a blow. Palliative, comfortable. They were giving up. No, Owen said, his voice raw. There's the trial. The HVT-074 trial at the Holloway Institute. Owen, we've been over this. The trial is closed. They aren't accepting new patients, especially not for compassionate use. Then we get them to make an exception, Owen insisted. Dr. Sharma gave him a sad smile. You can't fight a billion-dollar corporation with hope. Owen, he left the clinic with Poppy in his arms. He could feel her life slipping through his fingers. He had saved the research, but now the clock was ticking faster, and a saboteur, a ruthless CEO, and a wall of corporate indifference stood between his daughter and her last chance. Back in her lab that night, Eris couldn't shake the image of the note. Trusting no one, she bypassed security and pulled up the raw surveillance footage from the hallway. She fast-forwarded through hours of emptiness. Then at 3:14 a.m., a figure appeared, a man in a gray janitor's uniform. He paused outside her door before swiping a card and slipping inside for no more than 90 seconds. She couldn't see his face clearly, but she could see his build, his gait. It was him, the janitor from the lobby. The idea was insane, impossible. But the evidence was right there. He left the note. A janitor. How could he possibly know what a loose valve on a secondary coolant pump was? Eris leaned closer, her heart hammering. She zoomed in on the grainy footage, trying to get a clearer image of the man who polished the floors, the man who held a secret that could save her project or prove she was losing her mind. The grainy image was a ghost, a figure in gray, moving with a purpose that contradicted his uniform. Eris watched the clip a dozen times. Owen Ledger. It defied logic, but the evidence was irrefutable. He had been in her lab. He had left the note. Witumoy. She didn't wait. She took the elevator down to the 17th floor and found him at the end of the hall cleaning the baseboards. Mr. Ledger? Owen flinched. He straightened up slowly, his face a careful mask. Dr. Holloway, you're working late. So are you, Eris replied. She held up the folded paper. Did you write this? Owen's eyes flickered to the note. He shook his head. I'm sorry, doctor. I don't know what that is. Don't lie to me, Eris said, her voice gaining an edge of steel. I have security footage of you entering my lab at 3:14 a.m. I found this note on my keyboard. Owen's composure didn't crack, but Eris saw a flicker of deep fear in his eyes. There must be a mistake, he said quietly. Sometimes we empty the biohazard bins. The bins were empty, Eris shot back, and they don't teach you how to diagnose a pending failure in a cryo-freezer secondary coolant pump in janitorial training. I'm going to ask you again. Who are you? He was trapped. The janitor persona was disintegrating. I'm the janitor, he finally said, his voice raspy. No, Eris insisted. You're not. What was it? An army medic? An engineer? Owen met her eyes, and the desperation she saw there startled her. It wasn't the look of a man caught in a lie. It was a man watching his world crumble. Does it matter, he asked. I saw something was wrong. I couldn't just walk away. Why, she pressed. Why do you care about my research? Because your work isn't just about data and funding, doctor. The words burst out of him. Raw. It's about people running out of time. There are kids counting on you to succeed. Your project is their last hope. The raw emotion silenced her. He was talking about someone, the pleading desperation in his eyes. It was the same look she saw on parents in clinical trial waiting rooms. A new variable entered her equation. A motive. Who are you trying to save, Mr. Ledger? She asked softly. Owen flinched. I'm just asking you to be careful. Someone is trying to stop you. The valve. It was deliberate. He was deflecting, offering her a piece of himself, but only a piece. For now, it was enough. She had a saboteur in her lab and an impossible deadline. This strange janitor might be the only person she could trust. Okay, Ledger, she said. For now, I won't ask any more questions. Your visit to my lab last night didn't happen, but I need you to be my eyes and ears at night. You see things no one else does. If you notice anything out of place, you come directly to me. Understood? Owen looked at her, a flicker of disbelief and relief in his eyes. He gave a single sharp nod. I understand. A fragile, unspoken alliance was formed. As Eris walked away, her mind raced. She had more questions than answers. But she also had a new secret weapon. A ghost in the machine. Miles away, Leona Crestwood's phone buzzed. It was her head of security. We found something in that 4-year gap, Ms. Crestwood, the man's voice said. He wasn't on any financial grid, but we cross-referenced hospital admission records. His daughter, Poppy Ledger, was a long-term patient at St. Michael's Pediatric Hospital. Severe autoimmune deficiency. Leona felt a chill. And here's the interesting part, the security chief continued. There was a nurse on that same pediatric ICU floor, a young guy, a prodigy. He resigned suddenly. The same week, an inquiry was launched into an equipment malfunction that resulted in a patient's death. The hospital sealed the records, but I pulled his original employment file. His name was Owen Ledger, the words echoed in Leona's penthouse. His name was Owen Ledger. She lowered the phone, the pieces fitting together. A disgraced nurse, a patient death, a sick daughter. It wasn't a puzzle anymore. It was a tragedy. Her first instinct was to eliminate the threat. A man with a history like that was a liability. He had to be fired. But then the image of Finn gasping for air flashed in her mind. She saw Owen not as a liability, but as the only person who had known what to do. And he had a daughter, a little girl named Poppy. The mother in her wrestled with the CEO. Firing him would be easy, clean, but it would also be cruel and a waste. This man had a unique set of skills and a motive more powerful than any paycheck. a motive she could use. Down on the 17th floor, Owen moved with a new purpose. His eyes weren't on scuff marks. They were on people. He was a ghost with a mission. He noticed things. Dr. Coleman, Eris's rival from oncology, was in the immunology wing far too often. A new cleaning crew had been hired, and one of them seemed particularly clumsy near the data servers. He reported it all to Eris in brief, coded notes left in a hollowed-out book on a library card. Coleman in Lab 3 again, 11 p.m., new cleaning crew, man with scar, avoids cameras. Eris in turn worked with a renewed, frantic energy. The one-month deadline felt like a declaration of war. She implemented new security protocols, trusting no one but the anonymous information from her ghost. A strange relationship was forming. He fed her information from the shadows, and she used it to protect the research that was his only hope. 2 nights later, Leona made her move. She found Owen wiping down the doors of the cryo-storage unit. He tensed the moment he heard her elevator. He turned, his face telling her he knew this was coming. "We need to talk, Mr. Ledger," she said, holding a tablet. "St. Michael's Pediatric Hospital, the ICU. You were a nurse there for 2 years, a very good one." Owen's face went pale. The mop handle clattered to the floor. "They called you a prodigy," Leona continued, relentless, until an incident with a ventilator. A 7-year-old boy died. The hospital claimed mechanical failure, but the inquiry focused on you. You resigned before they could fire you. He could barely breathe. This was his nightmare, standing before him in a $1,000 sweater. "And your daughter," Leona said, her voice softening a fraction. "Poppy, severe primary immunodeficiency." Owen finally found his voice, a broken whisper. "Please don't." "Don't what?" Leona asked. "Don't expose the fact that I have a disgraced nurse with a dead child in his past working 30 feet from a lab, conducting pediatric research." He squeezed his eyes shut. "It wasn't my fault. The ventilator was faulty. I wrote it up 3 times. They buried the reports." "It doesn't matter what I believe," Leona said coolly. "It only matters what it looks like, and right now, it looks like a liability I cannot afford." Owen braced a hand against the wall. "So, you're going to fire me?" "That was my first thought," Leona admitted. "But you saved my son's life. That buys you one chance." She swiped the tablet to a new screen. "Dr. Holloway's project is being sabotaged. My investment is at risk." Owen stared, confused. "You're in a unique position, Mr. Ledger. You're invisible." "You see everything," Leona said. "I want you to find out who is trying to destroy this project. You will report everything directly to me, not to Dr. Holloway." "To me? You want me to be your spy?" Owen breathed. "I want you to be a concerned employee," Leona corrected smoothly. Her voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Your daughter needs Dr. Holloway's trial to live. I'm the only one who can make that happen. I can sign off on a compassionate use exemption. I can save her life." She paused. "Help me, Mr. Ledger. Find my saboteur, and I will save your daughter. Fail me, and this file about your past goes to every news outlet in the city, and your daughter will never get her chance." Owen felt like he was drowning. Leona's words were anchors pulling him down. Spy. Betrayal. The price for his daughter's life was the last shred of his integrity. There was no choice. A father doesn't get to have a conscience when his child is dying. He picked up his mop, his hand shaking. "I'll do it," he said, his voice dead. Leona gave a small, satisfied nod. "I've created a secure anonymous email address for you. Send your reports there. Daily." She turned and walked away, leaving him alone with the wreckage of his life. The next few days were a special kind of hell. Owen moved through his shift like a man haunted. Every conversation was a potential betrayal, every observation ammunition for a woman who would not hesitate to use it. He sent his first report from a library computer. Subject: night observations. Dr. Coleman, oncology in immunology lab again. Accessed imaging server, new contract cleaner, male, scar on left hand, spent unusual time near main server room. He hit send, a wave of nausea washing over him. He was feeding Leona information he had already planned to give Eris. He was walking a tightrope over a canyon. An hour later, he saw Leona's plainclothes security discreetly shadowing Dr. Coleman. The next night, the contract cleaning company was summarily dismissed. Leona was acting on his intelligence with terrifying speed. She was watching, and she was in control. His interactions with Eris became strained. He still left his notes, but they were shorter. He avoided her gaze. He was her ally and a spy set against her, and the dual roles were tearing him apart. Eris felt the shift. Her ghost was becoming distant. The pressure of Leona's deadline was already crushing her. And now the one person she trusted felt like he was slipping away. Then one night she had a breakthrough. Acting on one of Owen's earlier tips, Eris cross-referenced the supply logs. Every contaminated batch had used filters from a specific crate. She isolated the remaining filters and reran her most critical experiment. It worked. The cells bound to the therapy agent perfectly. The data that flooded her screen was a beautiful confirmation of her life's work. It wasn't a cure, but it was the key. She wanted to shout with joy, to find the quiet janitor who had made this possible. But she stopped. She didn't know who she could trust. For Owen, the news was a double-edged sword. He overheard the triumphant whispers. She did it. The HVT-074 therapy. It's viable. A surge of pure hope shot through him. Poppy had a chance, but then came the cold dread. He had to report this to Leona. He sat in the library again, typing out the report. Subject, breakthrough. Dr. H stabilized a culture. Proof of concept successful. Used different cellular filters. He sent it. The reply was a text message to the burner phone he'd been instructed to buy. Unknown number. Call me now. He stepped into a soundproofed stairwell. She answered on the first ring. Mr. Ledger, Leona's voice was crisp. Your report was promising. I want to know more. That's all I know, Owen lied. The filters were the key. Don't be naive, she snapped. A breakthrough isn't just about filters, it's about process. Dor Holloway has been secretive about her binding agent technique. What did she do differently? The temperature gradients, the sequencing medium. I need details, Ledger. I'm acquiring intellectual property. Owen froze. She was asking for the soul of Eris's work. The proprietary science Eris had protected with paranoid fervor. To give it to Leona would be the ultimate betrayal. But Poppy's face flashed in his mind. He hesitated. Leona's voice dropped, replaced by pure ice. Don't forget our arrangement. I am holding your daughter's life in my hands. I expect full transparency. Tell me exactly what she did. The silence on the line was a physical weight. Betray Eris, save Poppy. The choice was as simple and monstrous as that. But there were lines even for a desperate man. To give away the science would gut the very project that held his daughter's future. He took a breath. I can't, he said, his voice a whisper. What did you say? Leona's voice was dangerously quiet. I can't tell you that, Owen said. Miss Crestwood, I'm a janitor. I don't have access to her research notes or encrypted servers. What I told you is what I overheard. The filters. That's all I know. He was lying, betting everything on her, believing he was powerless, not defiant. The silence that followed was worse than her anger. You are making a very serious mistake, Mr. Ledger, she finally said, her voice dropping to a temperature just above freezing. I expect results, not excuses. Find a way, or I will find a way to make you regret this. The line went dead. Owen leaned his head against the concrete wall, his body trembling. He had defied her. He had chosen to protect Eris, and in doing so, had likely condemned his daughter. He finished his shift in a daze. He was passing Eris's lab on his final round when the smell hit him. A sharp, acrid odor like bitter almonds and chlorine. A volatile chemical spill. He rushed to the lab door. A large glass beaker lay shattered on the floor, its contents spreading in a sickly pool. A faint vapor was rising. Eris was in her adjoining glass-walled office, her back to the spill, completely engrossed, headphones on. The sensors hadn't triggered an alarm yet, but Owen saw the truth. The beaker hadn't just fallen. It had been positioned on a shelf directly above a heat vent that had just kicked on. Another act of sabotage aimed not at the research, but at the researcher. As he watched, the building's automated safety protocol kicked in. Heavy steel fire doors began to descend, sealing off the lab wing. Eris finally looked up, her eyes widening as the heavy door to her office began to slide shut, trapping her inside with the fumes. Owen didn't think. He acted. He sprinted to the emergency override panel, smashing the glass with his elbow. He slammed the override button, stopping the fire doors inches from the floor. It wouldn't hold long. He ran to the emergency response locker, punching in a code he had memorized years ago. He strapped a respirator over his face, grabbed a spare, and slid under the heavy fire door. The fumes were thicker inside. "Dr. Holloway," he yelled. Eris was pounding on the glass of her office, her face pale. The office door was on a separate magnetic lock. Owen found the manual release, a small lever near the floor, and wrenched it open. He burst in and thrust the spare mask at her. "Put this on. The fumes are toxic. We have to get out." She took it, her hands shaking. He grabbed her arm and pulled her out of the office. They scrambled on their hands and knees, sliding back under the fire door just as the override failed, and the door slammed shut with the force of a guillotine. They lay panting in the hallway as security guards ran toward them, alarms blaring. Eris pulled the mask from her face. She looked at Owen, who was checking her eyes, her breathing with clinical intensity. She saw him not as a janitor, but as a professional. The way he knew the codes, the way he moved through the danger, the ingrained competence of an expert. "You're a nurse," she said. A statement, not a question. The pieces clicked into place. "All this time, you're an ICU nurse." Owen, caught in the adrenaline, knowing the lie was shattered, could only give a weary, defeated nod. Before he could say more, a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Mr. Ledger." They both turned. One of Leona's top security men stood there, his expression grim. "Miss Crestwood has seen the incident on the security feeds," the man said, his eyes locked on Owen. "She wants to see you now." The elevator ride to the top floor was the longest of Owen's life. He stared at his reflection in the polished steel doors. A man in a soot-stained janitor's uniform, his eyes wide with fear. He had saved a life, but signed his own death warrant. He had defied a queen in her own castle. The doors slid open to Leona Crestwood's private lobby. It was less an office and more a command center. Leona was standing before a wall-sized monitor, her back to him. On the screen, on a silent loop, was the security footage of the rescue. "Leave us," Leona said without turning. The security guard vanished, the door closing with a heavy click. Owen stood there, waiting for the axe to fall. "The official report calls it an accident," Leona said, still watching the screen. "A cracked beaker, a faulty sensor." She finally turned, her eyes pinning him. "But you and I know that's not what happened, don't we, Mr. Ledger?" Owen swallowed. "No, ma'am. You defied a direct order less than an hour ago," she stated, her voice flat. "You refuse to give me information I am entitled to. And then you do this. You reveal yourself to be a highly trained professional masquerading as a janitor." She took a step toward him. "You have been lying to me since the moment I met you. Owen started, but the words died. Every word was true. "I have your entire file right here," she said, tapping a tablet. "I know everything, Owen. St. Michael's, the ventilator, the dead child, the cover-up." She paused. "Tell me your side of it, the part that isn't in the file." There were no more lies. He was exposed. So he told her. He spoke in a low, steady voice, the words coming in a torrent, a dam inside him finally broken. He told her about the ventilator's faulty alarm, about the 3 maintenance reports he had filed that were ignored. He told her about the little boy, Leo, who loved superheroes. He told her about the moment he found him, the alarm silent, the machine that was supposed to be breathing for him still. He told her how the hospital's lawyers had descended, how his reports vanished, how they offered him a generous severance with an ironclad non-disclosure agreement. They painted him as a negligent nurse and threatened to ruin him if he fought. He had a sick daughter. He had no choice but to take the deal and disappear. He lost his license, his career, his identity, all to protect a hospital stock price. When he finished, the silence was profound. Leona was quiet for a long time. She looked from the file to the man before her, a man broken not by a mistake, but by a system of power she knew all too well. She was a master of that system, and she knew a victim of it when she saw one. "The hospital that did this to you," she said finally, her voice laced with a cold fury, "they are a subsidiary of a rival corporation, one I have been trying to acquire." Owen looked at her, confused. "You are not a liability, Mr. Ledger," Leona said, a new sharp light in her eyes. "You are an asset, a weapon, and I have been looking for a weapon just like you. She walked to her desk and turned off the monitor. The old arrangement is over. She looked him directly in the eye, her demeanor shifting from accuser to commander. Here is the new arrangement. I am assigning my top legal team to the St. Michael's case. They will reopen the inquiry. They will find your buried reports, and they will expose the cover-up. I am going to clear your name, Owen. Your nursing license will be reinstated. Owen stared, speechless. It was an impossible dream, and I will personally fund your daughter's treatment, Leona continued, her voice ringing with power. Whether Dr. Holloway's therapy is ready or not, I will find the best doctors in the world. Poppy will get the care she needs. That is my promise. She paused, letting the weight of her offer settle. It was everything he had lost, everything he had ever wanted. In return, she said, her voice sharp as a diamond, you will work for me, not as a janitor, not as a spiewame. You will be reassigned, effective immediately, to Dr. Holloway's project. Your new title is Clinical Protocol and Safety Manager. You will be her partner. You will use your skills to protect her and my investment. You will work with her to find the saboteur. She leaned forward. You have 1 month, the same deadline I gave her. Save my project, Owen. And in doing so, you will save your daughter and yourself. Do we have a deal? Owen stood in the vast, silent office. Leona Crestwood's offer hung in the air, impossibly bright, impossibly heavy. It was a pardon, a resurrection, a way back. His mind reeled, his name cleared, his license back. Poppy saved. He looked at Leona and saw no deception, only the cold certainty of a woman who reshaped the world to her will. She wasn't offering a gift. She was making a strategic investment. He was the key to her project, and Poppy was the key to him. He took a deep breath, the first one that didn't feel scraped raw. Yes, he said, his voice firm and clear. We have a deal. Leona's lips curved into a faint, satisfied smile. She pressed a button on her intercom. Dorian, come in here and bring the file for our new department head. The transformation was ruthlessly efficient. Within 20 minutes, Owen Ledger, the janitor, ceased to exist. He was escorted to an empty executive office where a tailored suit, shirts, and shoes in his exact size were waiting. He was handed a new ID badge, its gold trim gleaming. Owen Ledger, Clinical Protocol and Safety Manager. He was handed a phone, a laptop, and a stack of papers to sign that he knew was an ironclad contract of loyalty. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The tired, hunted look was replaced by a sharp-edged focus. His first official act was to accompany Leona to the 17th floor. They found Eris in her lab, hunched over a microscope. She looked up, her eyes widening as she saw Owen beside the CEO, dressed in a suit worth more than her car. Dr. Holloway, Leona began, I am assigning a new manager to your project to oversee safety and clinical protocols. This is Owen Ledger. He will have full access to your lab, your research, and your team. He answers directly to me. Is that understood? Eris stared, speechless. Her secret ally, her ghost, was now her boss. Leona, with all due respect, you can't just... I can and I have, Leona cut her off. Mr. Ledger's expertise in clinical crisis management will be invaluable in safeguarding my investment, especially in light of recent accidents. Leona turned to leave. I expect you both to work together. Your deadline has not changed. The door closed, leaving Owen and Eris in a profoundly awkward silence. What in the world just happened? Eris asked, a mix of anger and bewilderment. 1 minute you're a janitor, the next you're a manager. Who are you? It's complicated, Owen said. She knows, Eris. She knows about my past, which is, I was a pediatric ICU nurse, he sighed. I was a good one until something went wrong that wasn't my fault, but they made it my fault. Eris studied his face, the data piecing together. The skills in the lobby, the knowledge of the freezer, the rescue, it all fit. So, she's blackmailing you, Eris concluded. Not anymore, Owen said. We have a new arrangement, one that helps both of us. He took a step closer. I'm on your side, Eris. I always have been. The only difference is now I don't have to hide in the shadows. We can finally fight back. Later that afternoon, Owen left the institute and went to the clinic. He found Poppy in the playroom, smaller and paler than ever. He knelt in front of her, his expensive suit feeling ridiculous. Hey, sweet pea, he said, his voice thick. Daddy, she whispered, her arms wrapping around his neck. You're wearing a costume. He laughed, a real laugh, something like that. Hey, Pop, I met a very powerful lady. She's going to help us. She's going to help the doctors make you better. Poppy looked at him, her hazel eyes searching his. Really? Really, he said, pulling her close. For the first time in years, it wasn't a lie. It wasn't a desperate hope. It was a promise backed by the terrifying power of Leona Crestwood. The next morning, a sleek black town car pulled up outside Owen's modest apartment building. The driver, a stoic man in a pristine uniform, opened the back door. Owen and Poppy emerged, still awkward in the presence of such luxury. Poppy's small hand gripped her father's tightly, her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. The car glided through the city streets, carrying them away from the life they had known. Poppy pressed her face against the window, wide-eyed at the towering buildings giving way to tree-lined avenues. Where are we going? She asked, her voice small but excited. To a special place, Owen said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. A place with doctors who know how to make you strong again. The Carrick Center for Pediatric Care rose like a gleaming palace of hope at the end of a winding drive. Unlike the sterile hospital corridors that had filled so much of Poppy's young life, this place was designed to feel like anything but a medical facility. The atrium soared with natural light. Plants grew in carefully tended gardens, and the air smelled of earth and flowers instead of antiseptic. They were greeted by Dr. Eleanor Williams, the facility's head of immunology. Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine. Mr. Ledger, she said, Ms. Crestwood briefed me personally. We have a team assembled and ready, and you must be Poppy. She crouched down to the girl's level. I've heard you're quite the brave young lady. Poppy nodded solemnly. My daddy polishes stars, she confided. Dr. Williams's eyes flickered to Owen, who felt heat rise in his face. Then he must be very special indeed, she replied without missing a beat. Perhaps while you're staying with us, he can tell us his star-polishing secrets. As they followed Dr. Williams through the corridors, Owen felt a weight shifting on his shoulders. Not disappearing, Poppy was still desperately ill, the saboteur still at large, his new role a fragile construction. But for the first time in years, he wasn't carrying it all alone. Back at the Holloway Institute, Eris was pacing her office, her face a storm cloud. Ben, her lab assistant, watched nervously from behind his computer. I don't care what Crestwood says, Eris fumed. I'm not having some janitor supervising my research. It's insulting. Ben cleared his throat. Technically, Dr. Holloway, he's not a janitor anymore. She shot him a withering look. You know what I mean. This man, whoever he really is, just walks in and gets handed authority over my life's work? She slammed a stack of papers down. And now I'm supposed to what? Just trust him? After he's been spying on me for who knows how long. He did save your life, Ben ventured cautiously, and he seemed to know exactly what was wrong with the freezer. Maybe he could be helpful? Eris stopped pacing. Ben's words reluctantly penetrated her anger. The man had saved her, twice if she counted the freezer. And there was the chemical attack. If he hadn't been there, and why would he help her only to sabotage her later? It didn't make sense. She thought of Owen's face when he'd talked about people running out of time. The raw pain there was real. Whatever game Leona was playing, Owen Ledger was caught in the middle of it, just as she was. Her phone chimed with a message. She glanced at it. New patient file for your review. Priority, L. Crestwood. Attached was a medical record for Poppy Ledger, age 7. Diagnosis, severe primary immunodeficiency with autoimmune complications. Current prognosis, terminal without intervention. Eris sank into her chair. So that was it, the missing piece. Leona had found Owen's weakness and was exploiting it ruthlessly, but in doing so, she had just revealed something crucial. Owen wasn't working against Eris. He was desperate to see her succeed. A strange calm settled over her. Knowledge was power, and now she knew what was really at stake. When Owen Ledger returned to the lab, she would be ready for him. Owen spent the day at the Carrick Center, watching as Poppy underwent a battery of tests. Dr. Williams was thorough but gentle, explaining each procedure to Poppy in terms she could understand. By afternoon, the little girl was exhausted, sleeping peacefully in her new room with its view of the gardens. Owen stood at the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. His phone buzzed with a message from Leona. Legal team assembled, first filing against St. Michael's tomorrow. Pressure points identified. Clock is ticking on both fronts. Report to Der Holloway tomorrow, 8 a.m. He should have felt elated. The wheels were in motion to clear his name, to save his daughter. Instead, he felt a creeping unease. Leona Crestwood didn't do anything out of kindness. If she was moving this quickly, it meant she saw an advantage for herself. And if her advantage ever disappeared, where would that leave him and Poppy? The next morning, Owen arrived at the Institute precisely at 8 a.m. The security guard who had once barely glanced at him now nodded respectfully, calling him Sir. The executive elevator, once forbidden territory, opened for his badge. The transformative power of a tailored suit in Leona Crestwood's favor was unsettling. He found Eris already in the lab, reviewing data. She didn't look up when he entered. "Morning, Dr. Holloway," he said, unsure how to navigate this new dynamic. "Mr. Ledger," she replied coolly. "Or should I call you Nurse Ledger? Or is it Spy? I'm not sure of the correct protocol." Owen flinched but held his ground. "I deserve that. But I wasn't spying on you, Eris, not in the way you think." She finally looked up, her eyes sharp. "So enlighten me, what exactly were you doing?" He took a deep breath. "I was trying to protect my daughter, and your research was her only hope." To her credit, Eris didn't pretend ignorance. She placed a tablet on the desk between them, Poppy's file displayed on the screen. "Leona sent me this. She wants me to believe you're just a desperate father, that we're on the same side. Is that true?" "Yes," Owen said without hesitation. "It's the only thing that's been true from the beginning." Eris studied him for a long moment, weighing his words against everything she knew. Finally, she pushed a stack of files toward him. "Then prove it. These are the research protocols, the security protocols, the equipment specifications, everything you would need if you wanted to sabotage this project completely." She folded her arms. "Or everything you would need to help protect it. Your choice, Owen Ledger. Show me who you really are." It was a test, and they both knew it. Owen picked up the files and began to read, his trained medical mind absorbing the complex information with practiced ease. After 20 minutes, he looked up. "Your binding agent separation process is vulnerable," he said. "The temperature fluctuations you're attributing to equipment failure, they're too precise, too regular. Someone's manipulating the environmental controls remotely. And these contaminated filters?" He tapped a supply log. "They're all from the same vendor, a subsidiary that was just acquired 3 months ago by Nexelon Pharmaceuticals." Eris's eyes widened. Nexelon was their biggest competitor in immunotherapy research. "How could you possibly know all this?" she demanded. "Because before I was a nurse, I was in biomedical engineering," Owen said quietly. "I switched to nursing because I wanted to work with people, not machines. But I never lost the technical knowledge. And I've spent 5 years watching this institute. I know every system, every protocol, every vulnerability. Not because I wanted to exploit them, but because I needed to understand what was happening to my daughter's only lifeline." Eris leaned back in her chair, reassessing everything she thought she knew about this man. Not just a nurse, then, a highly trained professional with a unique skill set and an unmatched motivation. "Why did Leona really hire you?" she asked bluntly. "To find the saboteur," Owen replied. "And I think she chose me for the same reason you just tested me. Because I have the technical knowledge, the medical background, and the desperate need to see this project succeed. I'm her perfect bloodhound. And if you find this person, what then?" Owen's expression hardened. "Then I protect you, your research, and my daughter, by any means necessary." For the first time since they'd met, Eris smiled. A small, tight smile, but genuine. "Then let's get to work, Mr. Ledger. We have 26 days left." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. By day, Owen worked alongside Eris, reviewing security footage, analyzing equipment logs, and implementing new safety protocols that made the lab a virtual fortress. He pored over research data with her, his medical background allowing him to spot patterns that others might miss. By night, he sat with Poppy at the Carrick Center, reading her stories and watching the careful administration of experimental treatments that Dr. Williams had designed based on Eris's preliminary findings. It wasn't the full therapy yet, that was still being perfected, but it was enough to stabilize Poppy's condition, to buy precious time. The routine was exhausting, but purposeful. For the first time in years, Owen was using all of his skills, all of his knowledge. He was respected, valued. He was making a difference. But as the days passed, the saboteur grew bolder, more desperate. Equipment would malfunction despite the new safeguards. Research samples would inexplicably degrade overnight. Data files would become corrupted. Each incident was meticulously documented by Owen and reported to both Eris and Leona. The list of suspects narrowed. Dr. Julian Coleman, the oncology researcher whose lab space had been reduced to make room for Eris's expanding project, appeared frequently in security footage near the immunology wing during odd hours. But there were others, a lab tech who had recently been denied a promotion, a visiting scientist from a rival institution, even one of the board members who had voted against Eris's funding. What they needed was proof, conclusive, irrefutable evidence that would expose the saboteur once and for all. On the 15th day of their partnership, Owen received a call from Dr. Williams at the Carrick Center. His heart nearly stopped when he saw the number. "Mr. Ledger," she said, her voice calm but serious, "I need you to come to the center right away. Poppy has had a reaction to the latest treatment." He was in his car before the call ended, racing through midday traffic with a cold knot of fear in his chest. He found Poppy in the isolation unit, pale and shivering, her small body fighting a battle on too many fronts. The preliminary therapy was triggering an unexpected immune response, Dr. Williams explained. It wasn't fatal, but it was a significant setback. They needed to adjust the approach, recalibrate the treatment. They needed more time. Owen sat by Poppy's bedside long after she had fallen asleep, her fever finally breaking in the early hours of the morning. He texted Eris, explaining his absence. Her reply was immediate and unexpected. "Bring me Poppy's blood samples from the last 3 treatments. I have an idea." When he arrived at the lab the next day, haggard from his night-long vigil, Eris was waiting with an intensity he hadn't seen before. The reaction wasn't random, she said, taking the vials he had brought. It was predictable. "Look," she pulled up a complex molecular model on her computer. "This is the standard binding agent we've been using. But for Poppy's specific genetic markers, we need something more targeted." She worked feverishly, barely pausing to eat or sleep. Owen brought her coffee, reviewed her calculations, and stood guard against any interruptions. 3 days later, she emerged from her office with bloodshot eyes and a triumphant smile. "It will work," she declared. "I've cracked it. The binding process needs to be modified for each patient's genetic profile. That's why the trials have had such variable results. It's not one treatment, it's a personalized protocol." She had done it. The breakthrough was real, and it was revolutionary. Not just for Poppy, but for countless children with similar conditions. Owen wanted to embrace her, to thank her for what she had accomplished, but their relationship was still too new, too fragile for such gestures. Instead, he simply said, "Thank you, Eris. I owe you everything." She waved away his gratitude. "We're not done yet. We still have a saboteur to catch. And now that we have a viable therapy to protect, the stakes are even higher." That afternoon, they presented their findings to Leona. She listened impassively, her eyes calculating the value of what they had discovered. "So you need more time," she concluded. "No," Eris said firmly. "We need to move forward immediately with clinical trials, starting with Poppy Ledger." Leona's eyebrow arched slightly, the only indication of her surprise. "And you're confident this will work? Without the standard testing phases?" "As confident as I can be, given the constraints," Eris replied. "We've run every simulation, every model. The therapy is sound, and Poppy doesn't have time for bureaucratic delays." Leona turned to Owen. "And you? What does the father think?" He met her gaze steadily. "I think that my daughter is dying. I think that Dr. Holloway has created a miracle. And I think that if anyone tries to stop this from happening, I'll tear this institute apart brick by brick." There was a long silence as Leona regarded them both. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. I'll expedite the compassionate use authorization. Begin preparations immediately." She paused at the door. "And Owen, find me that saboteur before they realize what we're planning." The news of the breakthrough spread through the institute like wildfire, despite their attempts at secrecy. The air hummed with excitement and speculation, and somewhere in that buzzing hive, the saboteur was preparing for their final move. Owen knew they needed to force their enemy's hand. Working with Eris, he devised a plan. They would create a diversion, a false target that would draw out the saboteur while the real therapy was secured elsewhere. They leaked information that the final formulation would be stored in the main lab's cryogenic unit overnight, requiring specific temperature conditions that could only be achieved in that location. In reality, the actual therapy would be prepared in a secondary lab and transported directly to the Carrick Center under heavy security. That night, Owen positioned himself in a darkened observation room with a clear view of the main lab. Eris monitored the security systems remotely from her office. They had disabled the automatic alarms, ensuring that any intruder would think their actions were going undetected. Hours passed in tense silence. Just after 2 a.m., when the Institute was at its quietest, a figure in a lab coat entered the main laboratory. Owen leaned forward, his heart pounding. It was Dr. Coleman. He moved with the confidence of someone who belonged there, but his furtive glances betrayed his true purpose. Coleman approached the cryogenic unit, pulling a small case from his pocket. Inside was a syringe filled with dark liquid, a contaminant designed to destroy months of work in minutes. Owen touched his earpiece. He's here, moving to intercept. He slipped from his hiding place, circling around to block the exit. As Coleman prepared to inject the contaminant into the sample port, Owen stepped into the lab, flipping on the lights. "I wouldn't do that, Julian," he said calmly. Coleman spun around, the syringe still in his hand, his face contorted with shock and then fury. "Ledger," he snarled, "the janitor who became a prince, or should I say nurse. How does it feel to be Crestwood's new pet?" "I know about your wife," Owen said, ignoring the taunt. "I know what happened to your research." Coleman's face twisted. "Do you? Do you really?" "She was dying, and I was close, so close to a treatment that could have saved her. But Leona Crestwood decided my work wasn't profitable enough. She pulled my funding, gave my lab space to Holloway, and my wife died 3 months later." He held up the syringe, his hand trembling with rage. "They took everything from me, so I'm taking everything from them." Owen took a step forward, hands raised placatingly. "I understand loss, Julian. I understand desperation. But this isn't the way. Think about the children who will die without this therapy. Children like my daughter." Coleman faltered, genuine confusion crossing his face. "Your daughter? She has primary immunodeficiency," Owen explained. "She's dying, just like your wife was dying. And this therapy is her only hope." Coleman's eyes darted between Owen and the cryogenic unit. "Then why are you here? Why aren't you with her?" "Because I'm trying to protect the research that will save her life," Owen said. "The research you've been trying to destroy." Coleman's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Save her? You think Crestwood cares about saving children? She cares about profit margins and market share. As soon as this therapy is proven effective, it will be priced so high that only the wealthiest families can afford it, your daughter included." Owen shook his head. "Not this time. I've made sure of it. The licensing agreement includes provisions for affordability and accessibility. Leona signed it yesterday, in exchange for my cooperation." Coleman stared at him, suspicion warring with desperate hope. "You're lying." "No, I'm not," Owen said, taking another careful step forward. "I've been where you are, Julian. Betrayed by the system, by people with power. I lost my career, my reputation. But this, what you're doing, it won't bring your wife back. It will just cause more pain, more loss." He held out his hand. "Give me the syringe, Julian. Please, let me help you find another way to fight back." For a long, tense moment, Coleman stood frozen, the syringe clutched in his white-knuckled grip. Then, with a sound like a wounded animal, he hurled it against the far wall, where it shattered, the dark liquid spattering harmlessly on the floor. His knees buckled, and he sank to the ground, his rage dissolving into grief. Owen knelt beside him, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. Behind them, security guards rushed in, summoned by Eris, who had been watching the confrontation remotely. As they led Coleman away, his eyes met Owen's one last time. "Save your daughter, Ledger," he said, his voice hollow. "But watch your back with Crestwood. She'll use you up and throw you away, just like she did to me." The words followed Owen like a shadow as he made his way to Leona's office to report the night's events. She received the news of Coleman's capture with cool satisfaction, as if she had expected nothing less. "Well done, Mr. Ledger," she said. "You've fulfilled your part of our arrangement. The saboteur is caught, the therapy is secure, and your daughter's treatment begins tomorrow." She slid a folder across her desk toward him. "And as promised, my legal team has made progress. St. Michael's Hospital has agreed to preliminary discussions regarding your case. The evidence of their negligence and subsequent cover-up is compelling." Owen took the folder, feeling a strange numbness. He should have been elated. Everything was falling into place exactly as Leona had promised. His name would be cleared. Poppy would receive the treatment she desperately needed. His future, so long a bleak and narrowing tunnel, was suddenly opening with possibilities. But Coleman's warning echoed in his mind. "She'll use you up and throw you away." "Thank you, Ms. Crestwood," he said carefully. "I appreciate everything you've done." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We've done, Owen. This has been a mutually beneficial arrangement. The Institute retains groundbreaking research. I acquire a valuable asset in you, and your daughter receives life-saving treatment. Everyone wins." But as he left her office, Owen couldn't shake the feeling that in Leona Crestwood's world, the game never truly ended, and the rules could change at any moment. The next morning, in a specially prepared room at the Carrick Center, Poppy sat propped against pillows, her small face solemn as Dr. Williams explained the procedure. Owen held her hand, his heart pounding with equal parts hope and terror. Eris stood nearby, watching as the therapy she had created was prepared for its first real test. She had insisted on being present, despite having been awake for nearly 48 hours straight. "It's going to feel cold, sweetie," Dr. Williams told Poppy as she prepared the IV line, "and you might feel a little sleepy afterward." "That's normal. Will it hurt?" Poppy asked in a small voice. "Just a tiny pinch," the doctor promised. "And your dad will be right here the whole time." Poppy looked up at Owen, her hazel eyes wide with trust. "Will I be able to run and play after this, like the other kids?" The question nearly broke him. "Yes, sweet pea," he managed. "Not right away, but soon. This medicine is going to make you strong." As the clear liquid began to flow into Poppy's veins, Owen held his breath. This was it, the moment everything had been leading to. Across the room, Eris watched with the intensity of a creator witnessing her creation take flight for the first time. The first hour passed without incident. Poppy's vital signs remained stable. The second hour brought a slight fever, quickly controlled with medication. By the third hour, preliminary blood tests showed exactly what they had hoped for. The therapy was binding successfully, beginning the long process of rebuilding Poppy's compromised immune system. "It's working," Eris breathed, looking up from the test results. "It's actually working." Owen couldn't speak. He simply nodded, tears burning his eyes as he watched his daughter sleep peacefully, the deadly war inside her body beginning at last to turn in her favor. As evening fell, with Poppy resting comfortably under constant monitoring, Owen found Eris in the center's small conference room, reviewing the day's data. "You should go home, get some rest," he told her. "You've been awake for days." She shook her head, not looking up. "I need to make sure the secondary markers are stabilizing. If there's any sign of rejection, we need to be ready to adjust." "Eris," Owen said gently, "you saved my daughter's life today. The least I can do is make sure you don't collapse from exhaustion." She finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but bright with a fierce satisfaction. "I didn't do it alone. Your insights on the cellular binding process were crucial. And your courage in facing Coleman," she trailed off. "What did he say to you at the end?" Owen hesitated, unsure how much to share. "He warned me about Leona, said she'd use me and discard me when I was no longer useful." Eris leaned back in her chair. "He's not wrong. Leona Crestwood is the most ruthlessly pragmatic person I've ever met. She doesn't operate on loyalty or gratitude, only value." "Then I'll make sure I remain valuable," Owen said with a grim smile. Eris studied him for a long moment. "You know, when she first assigned you to my lab, I thought you were a spy, a corporate plant sent to steal my research or monitor my progress." She laughed softly. "I never imagined you were just a father trying to save his daughter." "I'm not just anything anymore," Owen replied. "I'm whatever I need to be to protect Poppy and your research." There was something in his tone that made Eris look at him sharply. "What are you planning, Owen?" Before he could answer, his phone buzzed with a message from Leona. Board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Full presentation of breakthrough therapy required. Bring Holloway and all research data. LC. He showed Eris the message, watching her face pale. She's moving too fast, Eris said. The therapy works, yes, but we've only treated one patient. We need more data, more trials before we go public. I think that's the point, Owen said slowly. She wants to announce it now while she controls all the information, before independent verification, before peer review. But that's not how science works, Eris protested. That's not how medicine works. No, Owen agreed grimly, but it's how Leona Crestwood works, and I think I know why. He pulled out his tablet and brought up a financial news site. There, a small item about acquisition talks between Crestwood Industries and Nexelon Pharmaceuticals, the same company that owned the subsidiary producing the contaminated filters. It's a corporate play, he realized. She's using our breakthrough to drive up her company's value before the merger. That's why she wanted the proprietary details of your process. Not to steal it, but to weaponize it. Eris stared at the screen, the pieces falling into place. And Coleman was just collateral damage. His wife, his research, discarded for a better opportunity. They sat in silence, absorbing the implications. Finally, Eris straightened her shoulders. So what do we do? She asked. We can't refuse to present. She'd just replace us. No, Owen agreed. We can't refuse. But we can control what we present. And how? As the night deepened, they worked, crafting a strategy that would protect the integrity of the research while satisfying Leona's corporate ambitions. It was a delicate balance, requiring all of Owen's newfound political acumen and Eris's scientific authority. By dawn, they had a plan. It was risky, potentially career-ending for both of them. But as Owen reminded Eris, looking through the window at Poppy's sleeping form in the next room, some things were worth the risk. The boardroom of Crestwood Industries occupied the entire top floor of the corporate headquarters building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a dizzying view of the city below. Around a massive table of polished obsidian sat 12 men and women in impeccable suits, their expressions ranging from skeptical to calculating. At the head of the table, Leona Crestwood presided like a queen holding court. Owen and Eris stood before them, the culmination of years of work contained in the presentation they were about to deliver. Owen felt strangely calm. Whatever happened in the next hour would determine not just his future, but the future of countless children like Poppy. The weight of that responsibility steadied him. Eris began with the science, her expertise evident in every precise explanation, every data point. She showed the preliminary results from Poppy's treatment, the remarkable cellular response, the promising indicators of long-term efficacy. She was brilliant, authoritative, compelling. Then it was Owen's turn. As the newly minted clinical protocol and safety manager, he presented the implementation strategy, how the therapy would be administered, the potential risks and safeguards, the long-term monitoring requirements. His medical background gave weight to his assessment, his personal stake in the outcome, adding an undeniable passion to his delivery. The board members watched with growing interest, several leaning forward as the implications of what they were hearing became clear. This wasn't just another promising treatment. This was a potential game changer in pediatric immunology. As they neared the end of their presentation, Leona's smile grew more satisfied. Everything was proceeding exactly as she had planned, until Owen clicked to the final slide. Proposed Licensing and Distribution Framework, the headline read, and below it, a detailed outline of pricing structures, access programs, and, most significantly, a commitment to making the therapy available at cost to patients in financial need. The room went silent. Leona's smile froze, her eyes flashing a warning that Owen pretended not to see. As you can see, he continued smoothly, we've developed a comprehensive approach that balances profitability with accessibility. By implementing a tiered pricing structure based on ability to pay, we ensure that no child who needs this therapy is denied because of financial constraints. One of the board members, an older woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. And the profit implications of this approach? Actually, Dr. Holloway has run the numbers, Owen replied, nodding to Eris, who pulled up the relevant data. Based on our projections, she explained, this approach actually increases overall revenue by expanding the patient base significantly. It also positions Crestwood Industries as a leader in ethical pharmaceutical development, which our market research indicates is increasingly valued by both consumers and investors. It was a masterful move, couching moral imperative in the language of profit. The board members exchanged glances, several nodding thoughtfully. Leona's face was unreadable, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her displeasure at this unexpected deviation from her plan. This framework, she said carefully, wasn't part of our original discussion, Mr. Ledger. Owen met her gaze steadily. With respect, Miss Crestwood, our original discussion concerned saving children's lives. I believe this framework accomplishes that goal while also serving the company's interests, and it ensures that what happened to Dr. Coleman's wife never happens again. The mention of Coleman sent a ripple through the room. The story of the saboteur had been carefully managed, but rumors always spread. Before Leona could respond, the older board member spoke again. I find this approach refreshingly forward-thinking. In fact, I'd like to motion that we adopt this framework as part of our official position in the upcoming merger discussions with Nexelon. A murmur of agreement ran around the table. Leona, recognizing when she was outmaneuvered, inclined her head in a gesture of gracious defeat. An excellent suggestion, Patricia. We'll add it to the agenda for tomorrow's executive session. The meeting concluded with handshakes and congratulations. As the board members filed out, Leona remained seated, her eyes following Owen with a calculating intensity that sent a chill down his spine. When they were alone, she spoke, her voice soft but edged with steel. That was quite a performance, Owen. I didn't realize you had such political instincts. I'm a fast learner, he replied, and I had a good teacher. Her laugh was genuine, if brief. Indeed. But remember, every lesson has its price. I'm aware of that, Owen said. Just as I'm aware that your arrangement with St. Michael's Hospital is still pending, that my daughter's ongoing treatment depends on your goodwill, that my entire future rests in your hands. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to match hers. But you should also remember that I now have the board's attention and their respect. And if anything were to happen to me or to Poppy or to Dr. Holloway's research, well, I've learned to leave contingency plans in place. Another lesson you taught me. For a long moment, they regarded each other, predator to predator, each assessing the other's strength and resolve. Finally, Leona smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. You know, Owen, I think I might have underestimated you. That's not something I say often. She stood, smoothing her immaculate suit. The merger with Nexelon proceeds next week. Your position as head of clinical implementation for the combined research division is confirmed. Dr. Holloway will have her funding doubled. And as for St. Michael's, she checked her watch. My lawyer should be filing the final settlement papers as we speak. Your name will be fully cleared by the end of the day. Owen stared at her, caught off guard by this sudden capitulation. Why, he asked simply. Leona gathered her papers, her movements precise and unhurried. Because good weapons are hard to find, Mr. Ledger, and exceptional ones should be respected, used judiciously, maintained carefully. She paused at the door. Besides, you saved my son's life, and now you've helped save my company. Let's call it even. As she left, Owen remained standing in the empty boardroom, the enormity of what had just transpired washing over him. He had gone from janitor to executive, from disgraced nurse to respected medical authority, from desperate father to powerful advocate. All in less than a month, his phone buzzed with a message from the Carrick Center. Poppy's latest test results were in. The therapy was working even better than expected. Her immune system was rebuilding itself, cell by miraculous cell. He texted Eris the news, adding a simple thank you that could never convey the depth of his gratitude. Her reply came moments later. No thanks needed. Just come back to the lab tomorrow. We have work to do. And they did. So much work. So many children waiting for the miracle that Poppy was already receiving. So much potential locked in Eris's brilliant mind and Owen's practical experience. So much good they could do together. As Owen left the towering corporate headquarters, the setting sun painted the glass and steel in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in that gleaming city was a small apartment he no longer needed, a janitor's uniform he would never wear again, and a little girl whose future had just transformed from a narrowing tunnel to an expanding universe of possibility. He thought of Coleman, whose grief had twisted into destruction. He thought of Leona, whose ruthless pragmatism had ultimately served a greater good. He thought of Eris, whose genius had needed his protection to flourish. And he thought of himself, not as a weapon or an asset or a liability, but as a father who had moved heaven and earth to save his child, a man who had lost everything and found his way back through darkness to an unexpected light. 6 months had passed since the breakthrough at the Holloway Institute. Autumn had painted the city in shades of amber and gold, leaves swirling in the crisp morning air as Owen pulled his car into the parking space marked with his name. Clinical Director was etched on the small plaque beneath, a title that still felt strange when he said it aloud. The newly established Leo Project Wing gleamed in the morning sunlight, its modern architecture a statement of purpose and hope. Inside these walls, children with rare immune disorders received the treatment that had saved Poppy's life, regardless of their family's financial circumstances. It was Owen's domain now, a kingdom built from the ruins of his shattered past. As he walked through the atrium, staff greeted him with respect, none aware that less than a year ago, he had been invisible to them, just another gray uniformed janitor polishing floors in the night. The transformation still struck him as surreal, like waking from a dream only to find the dream had become reality. In his office, he found a small wrapped package waiting on his desk. No card, no note, just an elegant silver ribbon that he recognized immediately as Leona's signature touch. The woman never did anything without calculation, even gift-giving. He unwrapped it carefully, half expecting some new manipulation disguised as generosity. Inside was a small silver pin, shaped like a perfect star, gleaming in the morning light. Simple, elegant, and loaded with meaning that only the two of them would fully understand. He held it in his palm, feeling its weight, a reminder of who he had been, who he had become, and the price of that transformation. His phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Williams at the Carrick Center. "Poppy's latest blood work is in. Call me when you can." Owen's heart still skipped whenever these messages came. The parent in him never fully at ease, despite months of positive reports. He dialed immediately, pacing by the window as he waited for her to answer. "Morning, Owen," Dr. Williams greeted him, the warmth in her voice already easing his anxiety. "I'm looking at Poppy's results right now, and they're remarkable. T-cell counts normalized, inflammation markers at the lowest we've ever seen. She's officially in full remission." The words washed over him like sunlight breaking through clouds. Full remission. The phrase medical professionals use cautiously, reluctantly, only when the evidence was overwhelming. For a child with Poppy's diagnosis, it was as close to a miracle as medicine allowed. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice catching. "There's no mistake?" "I ran the tests twice myself," she replied. "Owen, this isn't just good news, it's unprecedented. We're documenting Poppy's case for the New England Journal of Medicine. With your permission, of course." "Yes, of course," he said automatically, still processing the magnitude of what she was telling him. "Can I see her today? Does she know?" "She doesn't know yet. I thought you might want to tell her yourself. She's finishing her art therapy session at 11. You could take her to lunch after." And when he hung up, Owen sat heavily in his chair, the silver star pin still clutched in his hand. Emotions crashed through him. Relief, joy, gratitude, disbelief, a tempest too powerful to contain. For 5 years, he had lived with the certainty of his daughter's death, had watched her small body grow weaker as the disease consumed her from within. Now, against all odds, she was healing. She would have a future. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and allowed himself a moment to simply feel the weight of this gift. Then, with practiced discipline, he tucked the emotions away. There was work to be done, other children waiting for their own miracles. The labs were buzzing with activity when he arrived. Eris was already there, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, clipboard in hand as she supervised a new batch of the therapy. In the months since their confrontation with the board, their partnership had evolved into a seamless collaboration. Her brilliant theoretical mind complemented his practical medical experience, each pushing the other to refine and improve the treatment protocol. "You're late," she said without looking up, a smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "Poppy's in full remission," he replied, the words still unfamiliar on his tongue. Eris set down her clipboard, turning to face him fully. The news hit her not just as a scientist vindicated, but as someone who had come to care deeply about the small, brave girl who had been their first patient. "Owen," she said, her professional demeanor cracking, "that's extraordinary." "It's because of you," he said simply. "You saved her life." She shook her head. "We saved her life, all of us. The science, the timing, even Leona's ruthless pragmatism. It all came together exactly when it needed to." "Speaking of Leona," Owen said, pulling out the silver star pin, "our benefactor left me a gift." Eris raised an eyebrow. "Is it ticking?" He laughed. "Just a reminder of where we started, where I started." "She doesn't let anyone forget their debts," Eris observed, "even when they are paid in full." Owen pinned the star to his lapel, a decision that felt strangely significant. "I don't mind remembering. Every part of it brought me here." Later that morning, Owen drove to the Carrick Center, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He found Poppy in the sunlit art room, surrounded by paints and paper, her small face intent with concentration as she worked on a vibrant, star-filled landscape. She had changed so much in 6 months. Her once translucent skin now had a healthy glow, her thin frame filling out as her appetite returned. Most striking was her energy, the quiet, careful movements of a chronically ill child replaced by the exuberant physicality of a healthy 7-year-old. "Daddy," she cried when she saw him, launching herself into his arms with a force that would have been impossible half a year ago. "Look what I made. It's where the stars live when they're not in the sky." Owen examined the painting, taking in the swirls of deep blue and purple dotted with golden points of light. In the center stood two figures, a tall one and a small one, holding hands beneath a cosmic display. "It's beautiful, sweet pea," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Are we going home now?" she asked, beginning to gather her art supplies. "Actually," Owen said, crouching to her level, "I thought we might go to lunch first. I have some special news to share." Her eyes widened with excitement. "Like a celebration? Can we have ice cream?" He laughed, the sound free and unburdened. "Definitely ice cream, the biggest sundae they make." Over lunch at a nearby cafe, complete with the promised ice cream sundae, Owen explained to Poppy what her test results meant, using simple terms she could understand. "So the bad cells that were making me sick are gone?" she asked, spoon poised midway to her mouth, ice cream forgotten in the gravity of the discussion. "Not just gone," Owen clarified. "Your body is making the right kind of cells now, the ones that protect you and keep you healthy." "Because of Dr. Eris's special medicine?" "Yes, exactly." Poppy considered this, her small face solemn with thought. Then she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Does this mean I don't have to live at the center anymore? Can we go home?" Home. The word hung between them, complex and loaded. Their small apartment had never been much of a home, more of a medical way station, maintained with clinical sterility for Poppy's protection. Owen had kept the lease, unable to completely let go of their past life even as he moved forward. But now, with her recovery, they needed something different, something better. "Actually," he said, "I was thinking maybe we could find a new home. A house maybe, with a yard where you could play. Would you like that?" Her eyes lit up. "Could I have a dog?" The question caught him off guard, so normal in its childish simplicity that it nearly broke his heart. All these years of hospitals and treatments and fear, and what she wanted was the same thing any child would want. A pet, a place to belong, a normal life. "Yes," he said, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Yes, you can definitely have a dog." As they finished their meal, Owen noticed a familiar figure entering the cafe. Leona Crestwood, elegant as always in a tailored suit, her son Finn at her side. The boy had grown since their first encounter in the institute lobby, his shy demeanor gradually giving way to a quiet confidence. Leona spotted them immediately, her practiced eye missing nothing. She steered Finn toward their table, her smile professionally warm. "Mr. Ledger," she greeted. "What a pleasant surprise." "Ms. Crestwood," Owen replied with a nod. "Finn, good to see you again." The boy smiled, recognition lighting his eyes. "You're the star polisher," he said, "from the picture I drew." "That's right," Owen confirmed, touched that Finn remembered. "And this is my daughter, Poppy." The two children regarded each other with the direct curiosity of youth, immediately finding common ground as Finn admired the remnants of Poppy's ice cream. "We're celebrating," Poppy announced proudly. "My bad cells are gone, and I'm getting a doll." Leona's eyebrow arched slightly as she glanced at Owen. "Full remission?" she asked quietly, understanding the significance immediately. He nodded, unable to keep a smile from spreading across his face. "Just confirmed this morning." Something flickered across Leona's features. Satisfaction, perhaps, or vindication. The calculated risk she had taken, backing Owen's unorthodox approach in fast-tracking the therapy, had paid off spectacularly. It was a victory for her as much as for them. "That calls for more than ice cream," she declared. "Finn and I were about to have lunch. Why don't you join us? My treat." Before Owen could respond, the children had already formed an alliance, Finn sliding into the booth beside Poppy as they began an animated discussion about dogs. The decision, it seemed, had been made for them. As they settled into this unexpected shared meal, Owen found himself studying Leona. 6 months of working within her corporate empire had given him a deeper understanding of the woman behind the power. She was calculating, yes, ruthlessly pragmatic, absolutely, but also possessed of a razor-sharp intelligence and a surprising capacity for loyalty, once earned. "I received your gift," he said, touching the silver star on his lapel. "It's a powerful reminder." "Good," she replied simply. "We should never forget where we came from, or who helped us get where we are." It wasn't quite a threat, but neither was it merely a platitude. Leona Crestwood never wasted words. "The merger with Nexalon finalizes next week," she continued, smoothly changing the subject. "The board has approved your proposal for expanded access programs in developing countries. Your advocacy was convincing." "Children shouldn't die because of geography or economics," Owen said. It had become something of a personal mission, extending the reach of their breakthrough beyond the wealthy Western markets that typically dominated pharmaceutical distribution. "A noble sentiment," Leona observed, "and as you've demonstrated, a profitable one. Impact investing is the future, Owen. You saw that before most of my board did." The conversation flowed with surprising ease, touching on business, medicine, and the future of the Leo project. Throughout, Owen was acutely aware of the strange symmetry of their positions. Finn had been the catalyst for everything that followed, his medical emergency revealing Owen's hidden skills. Now, as their children sat side by side, trading stories and giggling over shared desserts, it felt like the closing of a circle. When lunch concluded, Finn and Poppy exchanged solemn promises to meet again soon, their instant friendship another unexpected gift of the day. "I'm hosting a small gathering at my home next weekend," Leona said as they prepared to leave. "A celebration of the merger, but also of the Leo project's success. I'd like you and Poppy to attend. Dr. Holloway as well, of course." "We'd be honored," Owen replied, recognizing the invitation for what it was, not merely a social courtesy, but a public acknowledgement of his new position in her world. As they parted ways, Leona rested her hand briefly on his arm. "The star suits you," she said, nodding at the pin. "Remember to keep it polished." With that cryptic reminder, she was gone, Finn's small hand in hers as they walked away. The rest of the day passed in a blur of joy and planning. Owen took Poppy to look at houses in a quiet neighborhood near good schools, her excitement growing with each property they visited. By late afternoon, they had found a modest but charming home with a fenced backyard perfect for the dog they would soon adopt. As the sun began to set, they stopped at a local shelter just to look at potential pets. 2 hours later, they left with adoption papers for a gentle, one-eyed mixed breed named Cosmos, who would join their family as soon as they moved into the new house. "Because he has stars in his fur," Poppy explained solemnly, referring to the white speckles across the dog's dark coat. "And because you told me that Cosmos means all the stars together." That night, back at the Carrick Center, Owen sat beside Poppy's bed for their nightly story ritual. But instead of the fantastical tales of stars and comets he usually invented, Poppy asked for a different story. "Tell me about when you were a nurse," she requested, her eyes serious. "The real story, not a pretend one." Owen hesitated. He had always protected her from the darker aspects of his past, the injustice and loss that had shaped their lives for so long. But with her recovery came a new need for honesty, for building a foundation of truth between them. So he told her in simple terms, about his work as a pediatric ICU nurse, about how much he had loved helping sick children get better, about the little boy named Leo who had died because of a broken machine, about how some grown-ups had blamed him unfairly, and how that was why he had to become a janitor for a while. "But now you're a doctor again," Poppy said, her brow furrowed as she processed the story. "Not exactly a doctor," Owen corrected gently. "But yes, I'm back in medicine, helping children like Dr. Eris helped you." Poppy nodded, satisfied with this resolution. "I think Leo would be happy about that," she said with the simple wisdom of childhood. "That you're helping other kids now." Owen swallowed hard, unexpected emotion rising at her words. "I think so too, sweet pea." As Poppy drifted off to sleep, Owen remained by her bedside, watching the peaceful rise and fall of her chest. Tomorrow they would begin packing her things. In 2 weeks, they would move into their new home. In a month, she would start at a regular school for the first time in her life. The future that had been stolen from them was finally returned, expanded with possibilities neither had dared to imagine. Later that evening, Owen found himself walking the quiet corridors of the Institute, drawn back to the place where everything had changed. The building was mostly empty at this hour, the daytime bustle replaced by the hush of essential systems and the occasional security guard making rounds. He rode the elevator to the 17th floor where Eris's lab had been. Now expanded into a full research wing, it hummed with advanced equipment and the promise of new discoveries. Even at this late hour, light spilled from beneath a door at the far end of the corridor. Eris was working, as she often did when inspiration struck. He knocked softly before entering. She was bent over a microscope, hair escaping from her ponytail, completely absorbed in whatever she was observing. "It's almost midnight," he said by way of greeting. "Even brilliant scientists need sleep." She looked up, blinking as if returning from another world. "Owen, what are you doing here so late?" "I just came from telling Poppy about my past," he said, sinking into a chair across from her. "The real story about St. Michael's and Leo." Eris pushed away from the microscope, giving him her full attention. "How did she take it?" "Better than I expected. Children have an amazing capacity to process difficult truths when they're presented honestly." He paused. "She said she thought Leo would be happy that I'm helping other kids now." "Wise beyond her years," Eris observed with a soft smile. "What about you?" Owen asked, nodding toward the microscope. "What has you working at this hour?" Her eyes lit with excitement. "I think I've found a way to adapt the therapy for autoimmune disorders beyond primary immunodeficiency. Rheumatoid conditions, multiple sclerosis, potentially even certain types of diabetes. The binding mechanism is the key. If we can recalibrate it to target specific cell types." She launched into a detailed explanation of her theory, her hands moving animatedly as she described the molecular interactions she envisioned. Owen followed closely, his medical background allowing him to grasp the implications of what she was proposing. "This could help millions," he said when she finished. "Not just rare cases like Poppy's." "Exactly," she agreed, her exhaustion forgotten in the thrill of scientific possibility. "But we'll need to expand the research team, secure additional funding. The clinical trials alone would take years." "Leona will back it," Owen said with certainty, "especially after the success of the Leo project. And after the Nexelon merger, she'll have the resources to go all in." Eris regarded him thoughtfully. "You've become quite the corporate strategist, Owen Ledger, a far cry from the janitor I caught sneaking into my lab." He smiled at the memory, touching the silver star on his lapel. "We all contain multitudes, Dr. Holloway." "Indeed we do," she agreed. "Oh, I almost forgot. Julian Coleman's wife's case files arrived today, the ones you requested from Nexelon's archives." Owen's expression sobered. In all the excitement of Poppy's news, he had almost forgotten about his other ongoing project. "Have you reviewed them?" Eris nodded, pulling a thick folder from her desk drawer. "It's as we suspected. Her condition was remarkably similar to the neurological variant we've been studying. If she were alive today, she could have been helped." Owen finished the thought. The tragedy of Coleman's story had haunted him since their confrontation. The man had lost everything: his wife, his research, his career, his freedom, all because the system had valued profit over a single human life. "What are you planning to do with this information?" Eris asked carefully. She knew Owen well enough by now to recognize when he was formulating one of his morally complex strategies. Coleman's sentencing hearing is next month, he replied. He's facing years in prison for the sabotage. But with this evidence, with testimony about what Leona's company did to his research, you want to help the man who nearly destroyed everything? Eris asked, incredulous. The man who could have killed me with that chemical trap? I want justice, Owen clarified, for Coleman's wife, for the research that was abandoned because it wasn't deemed profitable enough. The same justice I'm seeking for myself with St. Michael's. He leaned forward, his expression intent. What happened to Coleman? Losing funding, watching his wife die, being pushed aside for more lucrative projects. It's not that different from what happened to me. We both broke under the pressure of a system that treats human lives as entries on a balance sheet. The difference is, I got a second chance. He deserves one too. Eris was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. Finally, she sighed. Leona won't like it. She sees Coleman as a criminal who endangered her investment. Leona respects strength, Owen countered, and there's nothing stronger than standing up for what's right, even when it's complicated, even when it means facing your own complicity in someone else's tragedy. He gathered the folder, tucking it into his briefcase. Besides, we've proven ourselves valuable enough that she can't simply discard us now. The Leo project is too successful, the therapy too promising. We have leverage we didn't have 6 months ago. Just be careful, Eris warned. Powerful people don't like being reminded of their mistakes. I know, Owen acknowledged. But some debts have to be paid, even if they're not our own. As he left the Institute that night, the city lights glittered like earthbound stars against the dark sky. He thought about the silver pin on his lapel, about Leona's parting words. Keep it polished, a reminder not of who he had pretended to be, but of who he truly was. Someone who brought light to dark places, who made what was tarnished shine again. The week before Leona's celebration, Owen visited Julian Coleman in the detention center where he awaited sentencing. The man looked thinner, grayer. The fire of his rage banked to smoldering embers, but his eyes still held intelligence, and perhaps, buried deep, a flicker of the compassionate researcher he had once been. Coleman regarded Owen with wary confusion as they sat across from each other in the visitation room. Why are you here, Ledger? Come to gloat? No, Owen said simply. I came because I found something you should see. He opened a folder containing copies of the records Eris had given him. Coleman's wife's medical files, his original research proposals, the internal memos documenting Crestwood Industries' decision to terminate his funding. Coleman's hands shook as he leafed through the pages, recognition and grief battling across his features. Where did you get these? From the Nexelon archives as part of the merger due diligence, Owen explained. Julian, your research wasn't just valuable, it was foundational. The binding mechanism you were developing for your wife's condition is remarkably similar to what Dr. Holloway eventually created for our therapy. He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. Your work could have saved her. You were right about that. And you were right that it was cut short for corporate reasons, not scientific ones. Coleman closed the folder, his jaw tight with emotion. Why show me this now? What good does it do? Because I'm testifying at your sentencing hearing, Owen replied, and I'm bringing these records with me. Coleman's eyes widened with surprise. You're testifying against me? For you, Owen corrected, to provide context for your actions. To show that while what you did was wrong, it came from a place of profound injustice and grief that the court should consider. Why would you do that? Coleman asked, genuine confusion in his voice. I tried to destroy your work. I could have killed Holloway in that chemical trap. Yes, Owen acknowledged gravely, and you'll have to answer for that. But your story deserves to be told, the full story, not just the corporate-approved version where you're a disgruntled employee who turned to sabotage. He met Coleman's gaze directly. I know what it's like to be crushed by a system more concerned with liability than lives. To watch someone die because of corporate calculation. To lose everything you've worked for, everything you are. So this is, what, empathy? Coleman asked with bitter skepticism. Justice, Owen replied, as much as possible in an imperfect world. As he left the detention center, Owen felt a strange sense of peace. Coleman's path would still be difficult. There was no escaping the consequences of his actions entirely. But perhaps, with the full context of his tragedy revealed, there might be room for mercy, for rehabilitation rather than mere punishment. The night of Leona's celebration arrived, a clear autumn evening with stars visible even through the city's glow. The Crestwood mansion was a monument to wealth and taste, perched on a hillside overlooking the city lights. Valets whisked away Gittis cars, staff in crisp uniforms circulated with trays of champagne, and subtle security personnel maintained a watchful presence at strategic points. Owen arrived with Poppy, who was resplendent in a new dress the color of sunset. Eris joined them at the entrance, elegant in a simple black gown that transformed her from disheveled scientist to sophisticated professional with startling completeness. Inside, the gathering was smaller and more intimate than Owen had expected. Perhaps 40 guests in total, primarily board members, key investors, and the executives who would form the leadership team of the newly merged corporation. Finn spotted them immediately, breaking away from his mother's side to greet Poppy with the uncomplicated joy of childhood friendship. "Dad says I can show you my treehouse," he told her excitedly. "It has real electricity and a telescope for looking at stars." Wait, and as the children disappeared into the garden under the watchful eye of a nanny, Leona approached Owen and Eris, glass in hand. "You clean up well, Dr. Holloway," she observed with a hint of amusement. "And Owen, the star is a nice touch." She herself was impeccable in a deep blue gown that managed to be both powerful and feminine, her only jewelry a simple diamond pendant at her throat. "Quite a gathering," Owen commented, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. "I expected something larger for such a significant merger." "The public celebration was yesterday," Leona explained. 400 guests, press coverage, all the expected corporate pageantry. This is the real celebration. Just those who truly contributed to the success we're marking tonight." Her words were casual, but Owen understood their significance. This was not a business obligation, but a genuine acknowledgement of what they had accomplished together. To be included in this inner circle was no small thing. As the evening progressed, Owen found himself moving easily among people who, a year ago, would have looked straight through him. Board members sought his insights on the expanded clinical trials. Nexelon executives asked his advice on integrating their research teams. Throughout, he was acutely aware of Leona watching from a distance, gauging his performance in this new arena she had thrust him into. Later, as guests gathered for dinner in the grand dining room, Leona stood to offer a toast. "Tonight we celebrate not just a corporate merger, but a true synergy of vision and purpose," she began, her voice commanding attention without effort. "The combined strengths of Crestwood and Nexelon will change the landscape of medical research for decades to come. But more importantly, it will change lives." She gestured toward where Owen sat with Eris. 6 months ago, the Leo project was just an idea, a promise to honor a child whose life was cut short by system failure. Today, it has saved 17 children who had no other options. Children like Poppy Ledger, who received life-changing news just this week. All eyes turned to Owen, who felt a rush of mixed emotions at having his daughter's medical journey used as a corporate success story. But then he saw the genuine pride in Leona's expression, the respect with which she spoke of their work, and he understood that this was more than strategic positioning. She truly believed in what they had accomplished. "To the future," Leona concluded, raising her glass, "and to those who have the courage to shape it." After dinner, Owen found himself drawn to the relative quiet of a secluded terrace, needing a moment away from the constant social navigation the evening required. He was surprised to find Leona already there, looking out over the city below. "Escaping your own party?" he asked, joining her at the railing. "Sometimes the view is clearer from a distance," she replied cryptically. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the cool night air a pleasant contrast to the warmth of the gathering inside. "I know about Coleman," Leona said finally, her voice neutral. "About your plan to testify at his sentencing." Owen tensed slightly but didn't deny it. He deserves the full context to be known. Even if that context reflects poorly on me, on the company. "Even then," Owen confirmed. "Truth isn't always convenient, Leona." To his surprise, she laughed, a genuine sound rarely heard from the calculated CEO. "No, it certainly isn't." She turned to face him directly. Do you know why I hired you, Owen? Not just as a janitor turned executive, but from the beginning? He frowned, not following her meaning. As the janitor, it wasn't a personal decision. It was a standard maintenance position. Nothing in my institute is standard, she corrected. I review every hire personally. Your application was interesting. A high school graduate with no professional references applying for night custodial work, but with a level of articulation and precision in his writing that suggested a much different background. Owen stared at her, processing what she was saying. You knew? From the beginning? I suspected, she clarified. Not the details, but that there was more to you than appeared. I make it a point to collect people with depths, Owen. People with complexities and hidden strengths. They're so much more useful than those who are exactly what they seem. The revelation shifted his understanding of their entire relationship. What he had seen as a series of reactions to events had been, at least partially, a long-term strategy on Leona's part. So I was just another asset in your collection, he said, a hint of bitterness creeping into his voice. At first, she admitted without apology, but assets become people when you watch them save your child's life, when you see them fight with everything they have for their own children, when they challenge you to be better than your worst calculations. She reached out, adjusting the silver star pin on his lapel with a gesture almost maternal in its care. Do what you need to do with Coleben. I won't interfere. The truth may not be convenient, but it is often necessary. Thank you, Owen said quietly, genuinely moved by this unexpected support. Don't thank me yet, she cautioned with a wry smile. After your testimony, the board may have questions about your loyalty to the company. And what will you tell them, he asked. That loyalty to principles is worth more than loyalty to profit margins, she replied. That a man who stands up for what's right, even when it's difficult, is exactly the kind of person we need leading the Leo project into the future. She touched her glass to his in a private toast. Keep polishing those stars, Owen Ledger. The world needs their light. As the evening concluded, Owen collected a sleepy Poppy from where she had fallen asleep in Finn's treehouse, her small body warm against his shoulder as he carried her to the car. Eris walked beside them, her usual energetic pace softened by the late hour, and perhaps the champagne. Success suits you, she observed quietly as they waited for the valet. The executive, the father, the advocate, all these versions of yourself coming together. They were always there, he replied, shifting Poppy's weight gently. Just waiting for the right moment, the right catalyst. Eris smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her serious features. Well, I am glad they found their way out. The world is better for it. Poppy is better for it. And so am I. The simple admission, from a woman normally so guarded with her personal feelings, touched Owen deeply. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, squeezing it briefly in silent acknowledgement of all they had been through together, all they had yet to accomplish. As they drove away from the mansion, Poppy stirred slightly in the back seat, murmuring something about stars and boys in her half-sleep. Owen glanced in the rearview mirror at her peaceful face, then at Eris beside him, her profile softened in the glow of passing streetlights. He thought of the long, dark years behind them, the loss, the fear, the desperate struggle just to survive. And he thought of the future opening before them, bright with possibility and purpose. The silver star pinned to his lapel caught the light as they turned toward home, a small beacon guiding them forward. Sometimes it takes the right person to see you, Owen reflected, remembering the invisible man in the gray uniform who had once believed himself beyond redemption. No one is ever truly invisible. Sometimes it just takes the right person to see you. A frightened boy, a desperate scientist, a ruthless CEO who had forgotten how to feel. In the end, they had all saved each other, and in doing so, they had created something that would save countless others. A legacy of light in a world too often shadowed by profit and power. Owen Ledger, the star polisher, drove toward home, toward tomorrow, toward a future he had never dared to imagine. Behind him, the city lights glowed like fallen stars, each one a life waiting to be touched, to be changed, to be saved. And ahead, the real stars shimmered in the vast darkness, eternal and untouchable, yet somehow within reach for those with the courage to look up, to reach out, to believe in possibility. For every star polished, a life illuminated. For every life saved, a universe of potential unleashed. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything.